Jesse,
I have started recording.
I have given you that privilege. Yeah. Okay. This particular course on strategic financial management, it's the advanced version of Corporate Finance 1 and Corporate Finance 2 that we have learned during the second and third trimester. I'll just, today's session, we'll refresh on the basic functions of finance and the concept called money, and then we will move forward. When all this, the entire, it's a basically this particular course is the problem-based course. So we'll have to have different problems on different cases. So it's a problem course. So it's a very high-scoring course. If you have a proper answer in the examination, you will get full marks. So usually students will get 97, 98. They will get. So even in the end trimester examination, they will get full 75 out of, no, sorry, it is a 4-credit course. So 4 credit means 70 marks for end trimester. So most of my students will get 70 out of 70. So 98, 97 easily you can score because the problem-based course. If you are regular to the course without any class being absent, surely all of you can get 70 out of 70. It's a very high-scoring course. So this kind of courses will help you to get a high percentage of marks, because at the end of the day, after 6 trimesters, what is more important is your total, average consolidated marks. So these are all the courses will help you to score very high marks, so that your average percentage is always will go up. So this is an important course in that point of time. When you look at the scoring course, so it's a very much scoring for if you concentrate on a particular problems or case study that we deal in the class. Okay, let us refresh on what we have seen in Corporate Finance 1 and 2. As all of us know, finance is the basic function, and we say the cash is the lifeblood of any business activity. So without cash, without managing the finance, the company cannot run for a long time. So we have seen many examples. We have seen many examples. The company which is not managing funds professionally, that particular company will face a lot of problems that we have seen, including BPL. Now currently, Reliance, not Reliance, the Kishore Biani's Big Bazaar. These are all a company which is a very high turnover, but because of this period, because of the pandemic, they borrowed large amount of money. They could not manage the funds properly, and the entire Big Bazaar has been sold to Reliance Retail. We have seen. So if you manage the cash properly, the finance properly, usually the companies will have very sustainable business growth. So all of us have seen there are 3 major functions of finance. One is financing function. Number 2 is investing function. Number 3 is dividend function. So what is called a financing function? Financing function means raising funds. Financing means raising funds. So how does the company raise funds? That deals with financing function. The companies can raise funds only in 2 ways. Not only companies, any business function, any business function can raise funds only in 2 ways. One is debt and the raise equity. As an individual, you can raise funds only in 2 ways. As a firm, as a partnership firm, you can raise funds only in 2 ways. And as a company, a big form of business organization, a company form of business organization can also raise funds only in 2 ways, that is debt and equity. So debt means you borrow from others. We borrow from others, the company borrows from others. And the equity means the company has put their own funds. So debt is borrowed funds, equity means own funds. So only two ways the company can raise funds, not only companies, individuals or partnership firm or any form of business organization can raise funds only in two ways, that is debt and equity. So now the question is, how much you can raise through debt, how much you can raise through equity. Okay, so that will vary from one business to another business. There are so many other factors which determine how that a business can raise funds. What is the form of the structure of the capital? So the deciding the capital structure is the prime function of any business organization. So the combination of debt and equity, is known as the capital structure. That is what we write in the balance sheet. So the moment you decide this much is a percentage of funds that you can raise through debt, this much the percentage you can raise through equity, then you start raising funds and then you start executing it, and then you need to record it. It goes for the accounting function. That is what that you raise in accounting, and then you write in balance sheet liability side. So balance sheet liability side talks about the financing function. Liability side of the balance sheet describes about the financing function, that is the debt and equity. Now, how much percentage you can raise through debt, how much percentage you can raise through equity? That is an important question the business need to answer first before the business raising the funds. In case of manufacturing company, a general rule, it's not a hard and fast rule, a general rule. In case of manufacturing company, the company can raise funds through debt to the extent of one third, that is 33%. And then the own funds to the extent of 2/3, that is the 67%. Now, why the company should have 67% of equity? Why not 50% of equity? Manufacturing companies, the business model is entirely, so that depends on the business model. The business model is you sell the goods on credit and you buy goods on cash. You sell the goods on credit, you buy goods in cash. That is the business model. That means any manufacturing company that you say, you cannot sell the goods only in cash. If you have the business policy, you have a credit policy, say you sell only goods in cash, that means you don't get your customers. So the credit is the important factors in promoting sales. In promoting sales, the credit is one of the important factors. So the moment, especially for B2B marketing, so especially for B2B sales, the credit is important factor to enhance the sales. So in such scenario, the business organizations are forced to sell the goods on credit. So that means that is the doubt. The moment you sell goods on credit, how much you will get back, that we do not know. So there may be bad debts, there may be doubtful debts. Sometimes you will collect it back. So that is always there is uncertainty. When the moment you start selling goods on credit, there is an uncertainty. So in that uncertain scenario, you cannot borrow more. Why? Because debt funds has got an important two features. Debt funds has got two important features. One is there is a compulsory repayment of debt. Two, mandatory payment of interest. The moment we borrow from others, we need to pay interest. So we cannot forego the interest. So the interest payment is mandatory, and there is a compulsory repayment of the loan. Unless you have a cash with you, unless the company has got a cash with them, the company cannot repay loans, the company cannot pay the interest. So the company starts selling goods on credit. If the cash is not there, the money is not there, company cannot pay their interest, the company cannot repay their loans. So in that scenario, the company cannot borrow more when the company is selling goods on credit. So whereas equity funds, own funds, what is the important feature? The opposite. There is no compulsory payment of repayment of the capital. There is no compulsory repayment of capital. As per the business concept, the company is perpetual, the business is perpetual. The company need not pay the share capital till the company is winding up. So when will the company closed? When it is everlasting. So the company will never be closed unless there is the legal force, or unless there is a compulsion on the part of company to be sold. So until then the company is running. So the need not be paid back. Then there is no mandatory payment the dividend. The moment you buy the share, there is no mandatory payment of dividend. So there is no mandatory payment. At the same time, there is no repayment of capital. Okay, so that scenario, the equity funds are safe. Equity funds are safe, whereas debt funds are not safe. Debt funds are known as the SWOT. The moment we borrow more, you will have to pay back. The company has to pay back the interest. So it is like a knife. It's like a sword. Whereas the equity funds are cushion. It's a very safe. It's a very safe funds. So in that, but at the same time, debt funds are cheaper funds, and equity funds are costly funds. How do we say the debt funds are cheaper funds, and how do we say the equity funds are costly funds? Debt funds are cheaper funds because the interest payment is deductible income, deductible expenditure before we pay the tax. Because when we calculate the tax, we get a gross profit, and then we pay all the operating expenses. You get the operating profit, and then we pay interest. Then you deduct a profit. You get a profit before tax. Then we pay the tax. Then you get profit after tax. So interest is deductible expenditure for the tax calculation. So because you pay tax before you pay the interest, because the interest is a deductible expenditure before we pay the tax. So the more we pay the interest, the more the company pays the interest, the taxable amount will be reduced. The taxable amount is reduced because the tax the companies need to pay, not only the companies, but the individuals or the firms also need to pay tax in cash. You cannot pay tax in kind, because you cannot tell the government, okay, I'll give I need to pay 70,000 tax. Can I give 3 laptops? Can I give 3 mobile phones? Because you cannot pay in kind. We'll have to pay in cash. Cash need to be arranged. The big companies, the huge amount of tax the companies need to pay. So Reliance need to pay more than 300 plus 400 crore tax for all their conglomerate companies. So in that scenario, the companies need to arrange so much of cash with them to pay the tax. So the more we pay interest, the less the company pays tax. So the tax component, very, very important for the interest payment for reducing their tax burden. So in that reason, the debt funds are cheaper funds, whereas the equity funds are not cheap. It's a very costly funds because we pay dividend after paying the tax. The dividend is paid out of profit after tax. After paying the tax, the dividend is paid. So there is no tax advantage when the company pays a dividend. So it is very cheaper funds. It is very costly funds. So equity funds are costly funds, and equity funds are safer funds. Whereas debt funds are cheaper funds, but there's a compulsory payment it's a compulsory payment on the part of a company to repay the principal amount and the interest. So it is not safer funds. So both debt and equity has got its own pros and cons. It has got its own pros and cons. It has got its own merits and demerits. So the company need to uh, devise its capital structure by incorporating a proper, uh, by infusing proper debt in its capital structure, so that the overall cost of capital will be reduced. The more the company infuse debt, more the company incorporate its debt, then the overall cost of capital will come down. So in case of a manufacturing company, the companies need to have need to go up to the extent of uh, 67% of equity funds and 33% of the debt funds, because the business model is you sell goods on credit, you buy goods in cash. Whereas the service companies like hotels, you look at any hotels will not face always official burden, because hotel business, unless the hotel business depends on the quality of the cooks. The quality of the cooks are good. Always, any hotel business, always I require, I mean, whenever our students go for any kind of business ventures, always we recommend retail business and the hotel business, because those businesses will not affect much, because you sell goods on cash, you sell goods in cash, but you buy goods on credit. You sell goods in cash, you sell your products in cash, but you buy goods on credit. But the opposite of the manufacturing companies, because for example, hotel business, whether when they buy the groceries or vegetables, wherever they buy in bulk, they don't pay cash immediately. They pay after 60 days, they pay after 45 days. So you buy goods, you buy your raw materials on credit, but you sell your product, whether you make biryani or you make any snacks items. The moment a customer comes to the hotel, you take biryani, whether it's good or bad. The moment you touch the biryani, you will have to pay your money. You cannot say I'll pay back afterwards. You cannot do that. So you will have to pay in cash. So you sell goods, you sell your products in cash. The moment you sell products in cash, you buy goods on credit, the companies can employ, the business can employ more debt. The companies can employ more debt. So you take retail business, you take metro. I'm not talking about metro train. I'm talking about metro retail, or you take Walmart, or you take Reliance, any retail business that you take, the organized retail you take. The moment you pick up the products and then you come to the what is that the main counter, you say, I mean, I'll take the goods now, I'll pay the cash later on. Then immediately the cashier will say, I mean, you, sir, you keep your things here, you can come and collect it later. The moment you give your credit card, debit card, or you give your cash, then only the things will be coming out. So because you sell goods only in cash. But at the same time, how do they get their materials? They buy from Britannia, they buy from ITC, whatever the products they buy, they don't pay cash immediately. They pay, I mean, they pay after, according to the credit policy of the company, from whomever they are buying, 45 days or 60 days, they pay later on. So any retail business will not, unless if you keep the, I mean, if you manage the companies professionally, no retail business will be in trouble, because the business model is developed in such a way. You sell goods. I'm not talking about unorganized retail. I'm talking about organized retail. Unorganized retail, when you take in village, unorganized retail shops, usually people don't pay immediately. People always say, I'll pay later, because that is allowed. But in organized retail, such kind of activity is not permitted. So you take your products and then you pay your cash and then come out. So in that scenario, such companies, such service companies, you take electricity companies, or you take telecom companies. The moment you don't pay your bills, immediately your service will be cut off. Okay. So these service-oriented companies can employ more debt. So these companies can employ the debt up to the extent of 70%, whereas they can manage the capital with the 30% of equity, in opposite of the manufacturing companies. So the employment of debt and equity depends on the type of business the company undertakes. The type of business the company undertakes determine the composition of debt and equity. The composition of debt and equity is known as the capital structure. That is the first and foremost function of the finance, deciding the capital structure. So I'm adding one more word here, deciding the optimal capital structure. So what is called optimal capital structure? Optimal capital structure is a structure that enhances the value of owner. The owner, as all of us know, is shareholders. So the moment the capital structure enhances the value of shareholders, so that structure is known as optimal capital structure. So what is called the value? What is called the value of shareholder? The value of shareholder is market value of the shares. So the company, the moment we talk about profit, what is the value for the shareholders? Whether the profit, the shares have been increased by 300% or 400%, that is the value that the company gives to their own owners. So the structure which enhances the value of the shareholders, that particular structure is known as optimal capital structure. The first and foremost function of finance is deciding the optimal capital structure. That is the combination of debt and equity. Any clarification? Anybody? So I can keep on going like this. Yeah. So any clarification? Because I'm refreshing what we have seen in Finance 1 and 2, because which is the basic foundation for taking up for the next course. Next topic in the course. Any clarification? Anybody? No doubts? Anybody? No clarification? All of you are listening, or hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any clarification? Anybody?
No, sir. No.
Oh, Deepak is there. Okay. Good.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Deepak, what is called cost of capital?
Cost of capital is the expense incurred for raising a fund.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Sir, I guess it's returns in expected by the firm.
Okay. Okay. I listen, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Return expected by the company. Okay. Anything else? Anybody? Who is there? Elizabeth? What is called the cost of capital? What is that? Elizabeth?
Sir, the amount of fund that a company do incur or do expect.
No, I'm not getting it. Its sound is very, very low. Yeah. Gunjan?
Sir, required return that.
Gunjan?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, Elizabeth.
Sir, required return that necessary for making a capital.
Okay.
Sir, can you hear me? Hello.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to next discussion in relation with the capital structure. As we have discussed, for debt, the expenditure for raising the debt is interest expenditure, because you need to pay interest. That's called expenditure. It's called financial expenditure. Okay. If the company raises funds through equity, what's the expenditure the company need to incur?
Dividend.
Dividend. Okay. It raises funds without additional expenditure. Is that called source of fund? Is that called a raising fund? It is called the source of fund. You incur, you raise funds without expenditure. Can we say that particular fund is called fund? That we say it's a cash?
So then what about retained earnings? It doesn't have a cost.
No. Retained earnings means you are taking your shareholders' money and then you're retaining it.
Yes.
Which has also got a cost. Okay. So without, you are all the shareholders are surrendering their dividend and then they are taking back the funds. Okay. Which has also got a cost. That is also incurred expenditure. That is not without cost. Yeah. So I'm just asking, can we raise funds? Can the company raise funds without incurring any expenditure? If you go to the bank, you take a loan, then expenditure is there. What's the expenditure? Interest that you need to pay. Okay. So can we raise funds without incurring expenditure?
No, sir.
So that means it may be called a gift. Okay. Your parents can give because you are going to start a business, and then parents can give, okay, this much cash. Okay. For that, the parents may say, man, you need not pay back any interest. That is called a gift. Okay. That's legal. Legally, you can do that. Otherwise, if you take money from others, if you're not paying any expenditure on that, it is called a bribe. It is not the legal way of raising funds. It is not a legal source of raising funds. So keep in mind, the moment the companies raise funds without an additional expenditure, without any expenditure, then that fund is not a legal fund unless it is known as the gift. Okay, so any funds that we raise which has got an expenditure, either interest or the dividend. Okay, now when this is the company's point of view, I'm talking about the person who is lending the money, the person who is giving the money to the business. The person who is giving the money to the business may be individual. Individual can give the money to business as a loan, or the banks can give, or the financial institution can give as a loan. Okay. So when the bank is giving, say, about 10 crore to the business as debt, bank is known as an investor. All of you clear? All of you clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Bank is called an investor. Bank is investing their funds in the business. Or, one company is buying a stake in another company. So, for example, Reliance has bought the e-commerce company in furniture called Urban Ladder. Have you seen Urban Ladder? Urban Ladder, Pepperfry. These are all e-commerce company which sells a furniture through online. Correct, no? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Urban Ladder and Pepperfry, all these companies. So the Urban Ladder was bought by Reliance last week. Say about 695 crores. Something like that. I'm not sure about the exact deal. It's a cash deal. Exactly the cash deal. Because the Reliance has got about, this is the only company which raised funds during this pandemic period, about more than 50,000 crore. Now, Ambani is known as the third richest Asian in Asian region, Ambani. Okay, during this pandemic period. The company is buying, so that much cash, the Reliance is buying this much money in the Urban Ladder. So the Reliance is known as investor. He is known as investor because he is investing in another company. Okay? So when the investor, I'm talking about the bank. I'm talking about the bank, or I'm talking about the company which is investing in another company. Okay? The investor investing in some other company expects certain rate of return. So when the bank is investing in a business, say by lending 10 crore, bank is expecting certain rate of interest. So say 9%. Nowadays, the interest rates have all come down. So you can get the loan for say 7.5% now. So all the interest rates have come down, 7.5%. Okay. So the bank is expecting 7.5% rate of return from that investment. So 10 crore the bank is giving to the company. The bank is expecting 7.5%. Okay. Now what the business has to do? The business has to invest that 10 crore. They cannot keep the 10 crore idle. This 10 crore need to be reinvested. That to be invested by the company in some projects. So that particular project should yield minimum 7.5%. What is the 7.5%? 7.5% the company needs to pay interest to the bank. So that project should yield minimum 7.5%. So on the investor point of view, on the banker's point of view, the minimum rate of return expected by the investor is known as cost of capital. The minimum rate of return expected by the investor is called cost of capital. So what is the minimum rate of return expected by the bank? 7.5%. On the company's point of view, the minimum return that the project should yield, the project should give, that is called cost of capital. So one is on the investor's point of view, another one is on the company's point of view. So cost of capital is known as minimum rate of return expected by the investor. Minimum rate of return expected by the investor is known as cost of capital. That is why it is called the hurdle rate, or we call it as a cutoff rate. So dear students, this is a basic concept that we need to understand. These are all the concepts at any point of time in your professional life you should not forget. That's why I'm giving an example and making you to understand. I'm not telling you a theory. I'm just giving you an example and case so that you should never forget in your life. So these are all the concepts you should never forget in your life. Okay, you should not say, this is a return, all that. So you should have the proper basic in that. That's why I'm explaining again and again. So all this you have studied, you got you wrote section A, you got marks, and then corporate finance, some of you got more than 90% of marks. These are all only for marks. It's only for academic fulfillment. But your knowledge enrichment is entirely different. Knowledge enrichment is not equivalent to your academic fulfillment, academic requirement. So because that knowledge that you have, you should never forget. The moment you write an examination and you forget, that means you have learned only for an examination. It's not for knowledge enrichment. Okay. So these are all things that you should never forget in your life. So what is called cost of capital? It is the minimum rate of return, because that is called the particular project. Wherever the company is investing, if does not yield 7.5%, what the company can do? Hello? See, for example, 10 crore. So, 1 lakh. Okay, I'll say we'll put 1 lakh. Then I'll put interest of what is that? 8%. So how much the company has to pay? 1 lakh, 8%. Anybody?
8,000, sir.
8,000. So the project should give minimum 8,000 per year. Correct? If the project doesn't give 8,000, what the company can do? How do the company pay interest? Hello? Hello? See, for example, you invested in 1 lakh in one project. That project has given you only 6,000. Okay, turnover from that project, it is only 2,000. Got it? So that 6,000 only you got it. Then you have to pay 8,000. So how do you pay 8,000 to the bank? You have cash of only 6,000. What will you do?
Invest in one single investment, sir. If diversify his investment.
Okay, you have invested in only one project, is your example.
So from profit.
Yeah. Now what you do is, you may have some other projects. You have some other projects. You may have multiple projects. So from that project, you take money. Or you have only one project. Okay. You have only one project. No other projects you have. This is the only thing that you have. Keep in mind. Take that example. So you have only 6,000, but you have to pay 8,000 to the bank at the end of the year. How does a company pay?
You have to sell your asset and pay it.
Oh, yeah, correct. You have to sell, I mean, for 2,000 rupees, either you sell your small smartphone, it's something you sell, and then you get that 2,000. Sell your assets, good. Or you borrow more. 2,000 rupees you borrow from somebody else, and then you pay. You borrow 2,000 rupees from somebody, from your own and whomever, relative, somebody, then you'll have to pay back later on. So what happens is, then again, you cannot, the next year also the project is giving you only 5,000, again you borrow. What happens is the debt is becoming accumulated. At one point of time, you cannot pay your interest and you cannot repay your money, then the company will be sold to another company or the company will be closed down. That is a way out. Okay. So what does a company should do? What should the company do? The company should invest in a project where the company should yield minimum that particular rate of return. Okay, the particular project does not give you minimum rate of return, then in such case, the company should close this particular project and give that funds in some other projects, or the company should find out the ways how to enhance the profitability of the particular project. Okay, so that is what more important. So cost of capital means the minimum rate of return the company should earn from that particular project. That's why it's called cut-off rate. Cut-off rate. Cut-off means beyond that, below that, the company should not get the minimum amount. So the company should have minimum that particular amount. Then only the company can maintain its business. Okay, yeah. Shall we proceed further? So first one is the deciding the optimal capital structure. So to decide the optimal capital structure, what is more important function is cost of capital. Then second function is investing activity, investing function. That is, once you raise funds, so these funds need to be invested. Okay, the funds can be invested in only in two ways, only in two projects. One is it can be invested in capital projects, or it can be invested in working capital, your day-to-day business activity. Now, for example, the company has raised, say, 300 crore or 40 crore, or you say 40 lakhs. I mean, a different amount. How much percentage the company has to invest in capital projects? How much percentage should be invested in working capital? That depends on the nature of business. In case of a manufacturing business activity, the company should invest more in capital projects because company should establish the factory plant, machines, furniture. I mean, all those. I mean, land is very important component because it's got a very huge amount the company needs to pay. Then construct a building, or because that requires huge amount of money for establishing the manufacturing plant. Okay, so manufacturing activity, the company should invest in capital projects, say 70%. In case of service-oriented companies, I'm talking about finance companies, banking companies, or insurance companies, retail companies. Okay, So all these companies need not invest more in capital projects. I mean, you take any banking companies, you take any banks, all the bank branches are owned by the head office, owned by the bank. All the branches, all the branch buildings, are they owned by the bank?
No, sir. Mostly they are on rent.
Rent or lease out. Rent or lease. Insurance company, same. Retail, DMart, all these you take. DMart, all this you take. Or either rent or lease out. Lease. I'm talking about organized retail. I mean, even unorganized retail also, most of the unorganized retails may be rent only. They don't invest in buildings. Okay. So these companies need not invest in capital projects. So these companies require more amount in working capital, day-to-day activity. So usual allocation is 70-30 for manufacturing companies. 70% should be invested in capital projects, 30% in working capital. Whereas the finance companies, insurance companies, retail companies, hotel business, all this can have 60-40, 60% in working capital and 40% in capital projects. I mean, building, furniture, all that. So it depends on the business activity that you invest. Now, the moment we invest in capital projects, I mean, building, furniture, I mean, all those plant missions, all that, the companies need to have two important things that kept in mind. One is these projects, the moment we invest, it requires huge amount of money, that all of us know. It requires huge amount of money. You cannot invest in thousands. We have to invest in crores. Okay, so huge amount of money is required. But today's investment is certain. But what is uncertain is the return from that investment. Okay, how much time it takes, because the land has to be bought, the building has to be constructed, machine has to be bought, machine has to run. So it takes time. You cannot get the return immediately. Okay, so today's investment is certain, but what is uncertain is the return from that investment is highly, highly uncertain. Okay, and second important thing is the moment we invest, it cannot be taken back. It is irreversible in nature. It is irreversible in nature. That means that today you take a decision to invest, but it cannot be taken back. So for example, you bought a land, already the building has come up 2 floors. Then somebody saying, sir, this particular project will not work here. It's a very rural place. Because most of the companies, manufacturing companies, when you look at, these companies will be located in rural areas. Why it is so? Most of the manufacturing companies, when you look at, it is located in rural places. Why is it? Anybody?
The cheaper land.
Cheaper land. Cheap land, first of all. Land is cheaper. Then? Then?
Wide area of land.
No. Yeah, you will get, as much land that you require. Yes, you will get as much land you require as a cheaper rate. Okay, then?
Sir, easy labor. Labor we can get easily, sir.
Labor is cheaper. Labor is cheap. Electricity is very, because in a rural place, the electricity charges are less compared to the urban areas. Okay, the Bangalore Bescom electricity rate is entirely different from Chikbalapur, Kolar.
Government support.
Government support is required. Okay, easy proximity for transport facilities. You need not the trucks, which is whatever is coming, which carrying the material or finished products, without touching the city, they can go. Okay, proximity. Okay, so these are all the factors. The government support, because you get subsidy. You get subsidy when you invest in this particular one. I mean, they have an industrial zone. So the companies are established in the particular industrial zone. They will get subsidy for electricity subsidy, and then water subsidy. All those subsidy the companies get. Okay, So these are all the factors which contribute to the company to invest in rural areas. Okay, so you constructed a building and 2 floors, then afterwards somebody says, sir, it is a rural area, it is very difficult to transport materials. Can we sell it immediately? Can the company, sell it immediately, that particular land and building? Can they sell it immediately? Can you get the cash immediately?
No, sir.
No, sir.
It takes time. It takes time. You cannot sell it immediately. Unlike you sell what is that? Smartphone or mobile phone. The laptop you are going and selling for 2,000 rupees. You cannot sell it immediately because finding a buyer is very, very difficult nowadays. Finding a buyer is very, very difficult. Okay. So once a decision is taken for constructing a building on a particular land, it is very, very difficult to take it back. It is irreversible in nature. So these are all the 2 major reasons. There are 2 major features of investment in capital projects. So these capital projects need to be analyzed before the company invest in these projects, because a huge amount of investment is required. Okay. So that is why we have a certain methods with the whether this particular project need to be invested or not. So we have a payback period, we have an accounting rate of return, we have a net present value, we have internal rate of return, IRR, then profitability index. That's all that you have studied in 3rd trimester. How these projects need to be evaluated before the company invests in these projects. So that process is called capital budgeting. That process is called capital budgeting. That is investment, analyzing the investment in capital projects is called capital budgeting. These all techniques are available for deciding whether to invest or not. Okay, the net present value is a very common method used by all the companies throughout the world to evaluate the profitability of the particular project before it is getting invested, whether to invest or not. Okay, then we have the working capital. Working capital is a combination of cash, inventory, and debt, credit, short-term credit, debtors. So debtors management, cash management, and inventory management. So investment in working capital ensures the day-to-day operation of the business activity. So these cash, inventory, and credit need to be managed carefully. Here, while we are, I'm coming back to that point later on. Then third investment decision, the third finance function is, we call it as the dividend function. After investment, the moment after investing, the investment should yield the return. So that return need to be given to the shareholders. That is called the dividend. So how much percentage the company should distribute to the dividend, how much percentage the company should retain as reserve. That is a decision the company needs to take. That is called the dividend function, dividend decision the company should take. How much percentage of funds need to be given to the shareholders as dividend? How much percentage of funds the company need to retain as reserve? That depends on, that's what you might have studied in a dividend function, Walter model, Gordon model. So as per the Walter, all the companies are divided into 3 categories: growing company, declining company, and normal company. So he says growth companies requires more funds for expansion, for growth. So those companies need to retain more funds, and those companies should not pay more dividend. So the moment the company pays more dividend, then that particular company is not growing. When the moment the company is retaining more, that particular company is growing. So growing companies are retained more. They retain more. Declining companies pay more dividend. Why? If companies are, if at all, declining, then let the investor invest in some other projects so that they get the return from that particular project. So keeping in mind, declining companies pay more dividend. Normal companies the dividend policy can be determined by the company itself, whether they can pay more or they can retain more. Okay, the retention enhances the value of the company. That's why he said, sir, the retained earnings does not give any cost, because retained earning has got its own cost. The cost of equity is equivalent to cost of retained earnings, because the shareholders forego their dividend and they give to the company to retain as reserve, so that reserves can be used for expansion. So the retained earnings has also got its own cost, which is equivalent to cost of equity. So these are all the three basic finance functions: financing function, investing function, and dividend function, or we call it as the financing decision, investing decision, and dividend decision. So these decisions need to be taken very, very carefully, so that there will be a sustainable growth development. Now, another important concept that I need to touch upon is the value of money, cost of value of money, time value of money. That will, I'll take it up next, and then we will move forward. So any clarification? So this particular session is for refreshing what you have learned in the first trimester and second trimester. Then we will move forward. Any clarification, anybody, before we close? Any doubts? Anything? Anybody want to ask anything? So we need to touch upon the time value of money, both the present value and future value. Then we will take to the next. Anybody? Anything anybody want to ask? Any clarification? Anybody? Harish, any doubt? Hello? Harish? So we have three components, correct? We have a assignment component, and we have, I'll give you an individual case study, and then another component, what we'll do is I'll ask questions during the session. So each one will be asked 5 questions or 4 to 5 questions. So whenever you answer one question, you will be given 1 mark. So somebody can maintain that. Okay. Shall we do that for 5 marks? There are 15 marks is there, no, for our internal evaluation. So you will get 2 case study to solve. One is 5 marks, another one 5 marks. Okay. And then interaction, class interaction, we can have 5 marks. So each student during the course of time will be asked 5 questions at any time, any day, any time. This will be asked. If you answer correctly, you will get 1 mark. Immediately I declare, he is given 1 mark. Over. So like that, 5 times, you will get 5 marks. Is it all right? Hello?
So how many chances a student gets, sir?
5 chances.
For you.
or we can go for MCQ questions.
There should be some margin of safety, sir.
Okay, we'll decide. Okay.
But that's fine, sir. This is fine.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Anything else? Anybody want to ask? Anything else? Clarification? Any clarification? Anybody? Anything want to ask? Anybody? Anything anybody want to ask? Sri Rekha?
No,
Okay, you understood everything? You're refreshed?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sri
sir.
Rekha?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Shall we wind up? Anything is there? I don't want to waste your time. Okay, shall we wind up?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Listen, you can record and send it to me, no? Mail.
Yes, sir,
You have my
I'll-
email ID, no?
Yes, sir.
You send it to me,
I'll
no?
do
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thank you very much. We'll meet
you,
you
sir.
next session. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.